always glad when somebody says the young children will now be dismissed to their classes. It's not that I want the kids to go. I love having kids. I've never worried about kids being in the audience. Never yet met a kid I couldn't out yell. But it's a little disconcerting as a preacher to stand up here and look out and see about half the audience heading for the back door. So having that explanation is helpful. I appreciate George, and I appreciate what he means to you all. I have known George longer than I care to, either one of us cares to admit. I met George in Kentucky, in Florence, Kentucky. And the first time I met him, he showed up at wherever it was we met. I don't remember where it was, George, but we met. And the first time I saw him, he was wearing a big guy, wearing a red leather Arkansas Razorbacks jacket. And I looked at him and I thought, George, I appreciate that, and I'm proud of you for standing up. But George, you're in Kentucky Wildcat country. Somebody's going to hang you. Oh, he's a good man, and I enjoy knowing him. George called me and he said, would you, or I guess we met at the preacher's meeting. He said, would you take this Wednesday night? I said, I can try. And I'm going to try tonight. Turn, if you would, to the book of Hebrews. Hebrews chapter 11. If we're going to talk about faith, you know that Hebrews chapter 11 is going to come in there somewhere. Hebrews chapter 11. We often say we have faith, and we talk about the fact that we have faith, and we talk about how important faith is, and it's the basis of our lives, is our faith, is what we build our life. But do we really have faith? Do we really understand what faith means? If what we have does not cause us to change what we're doing, if it doesn't cause us to change how we're living, if it doesn't cause us to change how we talk, how we treat other people, is it really faith? Or do we just believe? We all believe there is a God. Love that song, There Is a God. And we sing it, and we all stand up, and we sing all the parts, and we're loud. We believe there is a God. We take that as a tenet for baptism. We have to stand up, and one of the acts of salvation is to be willing to stand up and say, there is a God, and Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. And I think sometimes we focus on saying that because we understand that baptism is the point at which our sins are forgiven, but we don't pay attention to what that means. What we're saying is that we believe there is a God. James tells us that that's great. The demons believe, and they're so scared they tremble. They're shaken. But the demons don't have faith. They just believe. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by the which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. See, I think it's important that we examine our faith. We need to look at our faith and to be sure that it is providing the example that Noah provided. The Hebrew writer tells us that Noah building the ark that saved him and his family was made possible by his faith. By faith, Noah did this. I love the book of Hebrews, especially chapter 11. I would love to show you. Unfortunately, I'm having to work with George's Bible tonight because mine is laying on the kitchen table at home. But anytime I talk about the Hebrews, especially chapter 11, I like to pull my Bible. I don't know about you. I'm an underliner. You all are underliners or highlighters, any of those in the audience, you don't have to raise your hand. Just know that I'm talking to you and approving that. I'm an underliner and a highlighter. And if you look in my Bible, My preaching Bible, Hebrews chapter 11, has got red marks and yellow marks all over it because I did something specific with my underlining in chapter 11 of the book of Hebrews. I did not do well in English. If you held a gun to my head and said, diagram this sentence or you're going to die, boy, I'd say start writing my obituary. I can't do it. But I know what a verb is. Y'all know what a verb is? A verb is an action word. We talk about faith, and we talk about Hebrews chapter 11 being the chapter of faith, in the book of faith. But if you take your underliner and go through chapter 11 and underline all the verbs, you'll be shocked at how many action words there are in the faith chapter. Hebrews chapter 11, the book of the chapter of faith, is a book of action. Faith caused Noah to build the ark. Let's look at Noah's faith. First of all, faith caused Noah to accept a future reality as a fact. You see, things are not unreal just because we don't see them. Things are not non-existent just because we don't see them. The most important parts of reality are things that we don't see. I said one time, I don't see the air, but I believe in it, and I have faith that it's there when I open my mouth and draw in a breath. A friend of mine said, I'm from Los Angeles. I believe there's air because I can see it. Hard to argue with that. Noah looked at a future reality as a fact. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 18, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. He says, I don't even look at the things that are seen. They're not important. I look at the things that are not seen. And he goes on to explain, for the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. I have a granddaughter who's going through a phase. You all have teenagers go through phases once in a while? Last time I saw her, she lives in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I don't get to see her but a couple of times a year. Last time I saw her, her hair, which was, when she was born, a beautiful auburn, is now purple. Granddad is not ready for this. But you know what? I'm okay with it. I can get by with it because that purple stuff will wear out. My granddaughter running up and throwing her arms around me and saying, Papa, I've missed you so much. That's not going away. Her love is real. And it's there. I can't touch it. I can't see it. I can't feel it. I can't hear it, but I can see, touch, taste, feel all the manifestations of it. And her love is real. Her colored hair will go away, I hope. I think this will pass. You see, the things which are seen are temporary, Paul says. The things which are not seen, that's what's eternal, and that's what caused Noah's faith to accept a future reality as fact. Put yourself in Noah's position. Noah, I'm going to make it rain. Rain. What's that, God? Because we're told as yet rain had not come upon the earth. Noah, there's going to be a flood. Flood. What's that, God? Noah didn't know what was talking about. Noah didn't understand what he's being told to do, but I can't see it. It's in the future, but I'm going to accept it as reality. Noah's faith enabled him to do that, to accept as real a future happening that had never happened before. And Noah's faith also allowed him to endure scoffing. I mean, it's bad enough for Noah. Noah, build an ark. What's an ark? But can you imagine over the next however many years it was, Noah's out there building this thing in his backyard, this big, huge boat, and his neighbor's saying, "What are you building?" "It's an ark." "Oh, what's an ark?" "A what? A boat? To do what?" "Float on the water." "What water?" "The flood that's coming." Now, at that point, his neighbors are probably looking around and saying things like, "Get the men in the white suits." What an idiot. What a crazy guy. He's touched. He's lost his mind. And Noah endured that because he had enough faith to obey God. You see, when we obey God, what other people think or say or do should be the least of our worries. That's the one thing we don't need to be worried about at all. In Matthew chapter 10, verse 28, Jesus said, "Do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." You pick that up. Don't fear someone who can kill you. What's the worst thing somebody can do to me on the face of the earth? The absolute worst thing that can happen to me. I can lose my job. Well, been there, done that, survived it. I can lose an investment. Been there, done that, survived it. I can lose a loved one close to me. Been there, done that, survived it. I can leave my Bible sitting on the kitchen table when I'm supposed to come preach for George. Been there, done that. So far, survived it. I've only seen 2 people walk out, and I'm assuming they were going to classes. The worst thing somebody can do to me, I don't know how it was here. Several years ago up in Kentucky, we had a period of time where nuts were walking into church buildings with guns. Did y'all have that here, George, in Arkansas? Probably because more of your members are probably armed than they were in Kentucky. Somebody asked me one time, I was at the Freed Hardeman lectureship, and he said, "Well, what you got to do is gather your congregation together first and figure out who's carrying guns when you start to put together your plan to deal with the terror." And I started laughing. I said, "It'll be quicker to figure out who's not." But we went through a period of time where people were walking in and shooting church members. And it was horrible. I said then, I've said since, and I'll say it again tonight. If somebody walks down that aisle and they've got a big AK-47 or an M16 or whatever it is, or a shotgun, whatever they've got, they come walking down this aisle and stand right here and say, "Preacher, shut up about Jesus or you're a dead man." What's the worst thing they can do to me? The absolute worst they can do is kill me. And I go home. I go to heaven. Now, if that's the worst they can do to me with a gun and I get to go to heaven, why am I worried about people making fun of me? I ask people all the time, why don't you get involved in personal evangelism? Why, as a church member, as a Christian, why are you not teaching other people about Jesus? You know that's a commandment. We are commanded to be ready with an answer for the hope that lies within us. Did you notice what we're commanded to do? That's the one command. Go forth and teach. Baptize. Teach. Be ready with an answer for the hope that lies within you. I didn't see anything in there, George, about having an answer for premillennialism. I can't hardly pronounce it. I don't see anything in there about having an answer for denominationalism or for any other ism that you want to come up with. What it says commands me to do is to be prepared to tell about the hope that lies within me. What is the hope that lies within you? I hope you're sitting there right now saying, heaven? Because that's my hope. That's the hope of the gospel. Can you look at somebody and say, I know why I'm going to heaven? If you can't, then you need to study some more. Grab George. Grab one of the elders. They'll help you. They'll prepare you. That's an aside. You get that free for nothing. But here's the situation about it having to do with faith. If we have faith, we don't fear those who can kill the body. That's the extreme. That's the worst thing they can do. If I don't fear somebody who can kill me, why should I fear somebody who's making fun of me? Why am I worried about somebody who calls me a Bible thumper? You're just old Campbellite, that's what you are. I don't care. Make fun of me. Oh, you think everybody ought to go to church? You think everybody that's a member of your church is going to hell? Well, no, that's not what I said. That's not what the Bible says. Let's see what the Bible says. I didn't say anything about that. But why am I worried about somebody making fun of me if I'm not supposed to worry about the guy that kills me? But we do. Number one reason, I started this little session here by saying, I ask people, why don't you get involved in personal evangelism? Why aren't you inviting other people to church? What keeps you from doing that? You know, number one answer, need a game show up here where that thing board flips over. Number one answer that I've heard, don't know what to do, and I am embarrassed. I'm embarrassed. And part of me wants to slap them up alongside the head and say, so what? So you're embarrassed. Jesus said, don't fear that. Don't fear the one who can kill you, let alone don't fear the one who's embarrassed you. Like Noah and like the Lord himself, we need to endure scoffing. You know what scoffing is? That's a $3 lawyer word, means making fun. Poking fun, that's scoffing. And they just walk off. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 3 says, for consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. Can you imagine what Noah went through? Scoffing, poking fun. We know some of what Jesus went through. How many of you have ever had somebody take a bunch of thorns and stick them on your head and slam them down on top of your head? This one you can show your hands. I don't see any hands. How many of you have ever been injured, shipwrecked, beaten, flogged, talking to somebody about Jesus? Raise your hands. I don't see any. Closest I ever came to that, George, Brenda and I, before we got married, we were on campaigns northeast, up in Pennsylvania, Indiana, Pennsylvania, which is the home of the university, Indiana University in Pennsylvania. We're on the campus, walking around knocking doors. Now, I'm with my fiancée, okay? And here's all these trailers with married students and students living in them, and a little thin, narrow steps going up to the top of the mobile home, and all the student housing is out there. It's my turn, so I go up and I knock on the door, and thump, 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 thump. Door opens, and next thing I know, I'm laying on the ground in the flower bed with the roses and the thorns. And I looked up and realized the young lady who answered the door had apparently been going swimming somewhere because she was wearing a immodest bathing suit. I'll leave it at that. And my lovely bride-to-be pushed me off the steps into the roses and took that call. That's when I knew she was a keeper, because I wasn't going to get out. That's the most harm that's ever come to me, knocking on doors and talking to people about Jesus. I can live with that. Have y'all even had that happen to you? George, I know it hasn't happened to you. You've been smarter than I was. That's the worst thing that's ever happened to me, knocking doors. Now, if that's the worst thing that happens, and I'm told to be prepared to endure scoffing and hostility like Noah, whose faith caused him to be able to endure that scoffing. Now, let me ask you this, because I'm about to quit preaching and go to meddling. Have you experienced somebody making fun of you because of your faith? Have you experienced somebody attacking you because of your faith? I see a couple of heads going this way. Good. Every head in this room ought to be going this way, because, brothers and sisters, here comes the meddling. I'm about to depart from preaching. Devil only attacks those that he doesn't already have. Think about that. The devil only attacks those that he doesn't already have. If you're not undergoing some difficulties in your faith, if you're not undergoing some problems on this earth because of your faith, then I question your faith. No, I'll take that back. You ought to question your faith. Are you acting like Noah did on something that's unseen and in the future because you believe it? Are you acting, are you living your life because you know and have faith that heaven is waiting for you, which is unseen, and it's not there yet for you? And if they're not scoffing at you, ask yourself why. Faith also caused that future reality that hadn't happened yet to have a practical impact on Noah's life. Most of us have a tendency to postpone actions on things that are important. We'll get around to it. Somewhere at home, we just moved. Somewhere in one of those boxes, I was going to bring it tonight and show it to you, but it's somewhere in one of those boxes, George, I've got a little piece of wood that's about that big around, and I know you all have seen them. And on the side of it is the big block letters T-U-I-T. Somebody gave it to me years ago. It's a round to it. You all have things that you're going to get around to when you get around to it. Noah did it then, because saving faith calls for decisive action in the present. Look at James chapter 2. Had to borrow George's Bible, and the printing's on the wrong side. James chapter 2, verses 14 through 26, and I won't read the whole thing, but verse 14, "What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to him, 'Depart in peace, be warmed and filled,' but you don't give them the things that are needed for the body, what does it profit? Thus also faith by itself, if it doesn't have works, is dead." It calls for something to happen right now. The option that wasn't presented is to say to somebody, "I know you're hungry. I know you don't have any clothes. I know you have needs. I'm real busy now. Come see me next week." How much good would that do that person? You think they're going to be hanging around for a week to see if you're not too busy that week too? You see, faith caused by that future reality has to have a practical impact. It's not just something we think about, it's something that we act on. We have to do it. If your faith doesn't cause you to do something, then, brothers and sisters, what you've got is belief, not faith. Faith will cause you to do something. I'm a movie nut. I especially like old ones, but one of the series of movies that I really enjoy is Indiana Jones. Y'all see any of those? There's one where he's after the Holy Grail. Now, this is all make-believe. It's all fantasy. But there's a scene in that movie where he's standing at a doorway in a rock canyon, and it's about a half a mile to forever down. And he's got to go across this open area to the doorway on the other side. And the clue that he's been given is that a man of God has to act by faith. You all see that movie? Some of you have. And what does he do? Well, he does something wrong, because I wouldn't stand there with my knee straight out like that. But he sticks his knee out, takes a deep breath, closes his eyes, and leans forward and lands on a causeway that blended in and you couldn't see it, a bridge. That's acting on something you can't see that you believe is there. That you have faith is there. Enough faith, not just belief, but faith that it's there, that you put your weight down. Love the story. The old man had his 100th birthday. And they decided they were going to take great-grandpa up on his very first airplane ride. Never been in an airplane in his entire life. 100 years old. Took him out of the airport. The kids and the grandkids and the great-grandkids, they all put him in the airplane. Little airplane at a flight service there. Airplane took off. Pilot flew around his county. He had never been outside the county in his whole life. Flew around his county, flew over his farm, circled his farm where he had been born and raised all of his kids, and let him see the farm, and let him see the county, let him see all the farmland, brought him back and landed at the airport. He got out. A reporter come running up from the local newspaper. They said, "Grandpa, how'd you like your first airplane ride?" He said, "It was fun, but tell you the truth, I never did put my full weight down." Too often that's us. We believe, but we don't put our full weight down. And faith causes us to act just like Noah did in the face of difficulties and challenges. And faith is what caused Noah to do exactly what God instructed without modifying it. He did what God said. It's important that we do things according to a pattern. In Hebrews chapter 8, verse 5, we have the writer talking about Moses. He says, who served the ancestors, who served the copy and shadow of the heavenly things, as Moses was divinely instructed when he was about to make the tabernacle. For he said, see that you make all things according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. Make them according to the pattern that God has given you. Don't make it different. I've told you what to do. Do it that way. Genesis 6, verse 14, God told Noah, make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and outside with pitch. And this is how you shall make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, its height 30 cubits. You think Noah would have been saved in that ark if he had said, I'm a little short on gopher wood, let's make it 299 cubits. Have you seen the price of lumber lately? 1 cubit. What difference does 1 cubit make? We'll be okay. I predict that ark would have sunk like a rock. He had to make it the way God said to make it. Nothing more, nothing less. We look at Revelation chapter 22, verse 18. For I testify to everyone who hears the prophecy of this book, if anyone adds to these things, God will add to him the plagues that are written in this book. And if anyone takes away from the words of this prophecy, God shall take away his part from the book of life. Brothers and sisters, God's not fooling around. There are examples all over. You know the examples as well as I do. The strange fire, moving the ark the way the covenant the way it wasn't supposed to be moved, reaching out and touching the ark when he wasn't supposed to touch it. Now there's a well-meaning man. The ark is being moved. It's starting to shift and fall on the cart. Logic says, everything about us says, don't let God's ark hit the ground. He reached out to steady it, and what happened? It was consumed. Right there, right then. It wasn't even his fault. The whole fault of the thing lies with David, who said, instead of carrying the ark on poles like God said, we're going to put it on a cart, a new cart. This will be the right way. This will be the better way to do it. And it caused the death of a man who tried to do the right thing. I see that all over the religious, so-called religious world today. I know baptism is critical. I know you got to be baptized. I know you got to be baptized for the remission of sins. But Bobby's Joe is so sick. If we put him down in the water, he might not come back up alive. Let's do something a little better for him. This is logical. No, brothers and sisters, that's man's logic. That's not God's law. That's not following God's instruction. And Noah's faith said to him, God said 300 cubits. He didn't say 299. He didn't say 301. He said 300 cubits. That's how long it's going to be. And that faith of doing exactly what God commanded without modification is the faith that saved Noah. You see, God's silence is significant. It needs to be respected. Used to be a saying among us, among the brethren, that we try to speak where the Bible speaks and be silent where the Bible is silent. I don't know what happened to that, but I wish we'd get back to it. I wish we would pay attention to it and say, this is the authority. My opinion, this is Leon's opinion, so I'm going to step out of the pulpit for a minute. My opinion is that the most dangerous words in the entire world today are I think. I think. It's my belief that you could go back through history and look at every time there's been a schism, a break, a new denomination founded, a church split, a problem in the Lord's body. Wouldn't surprise me at all that in every single case you'll find somebody saying, I think. Brothers and sisters, what I think does not matter a bit. What matters is what God said. This is it. If it's not in here, we need to not be doing it. If it's in here, we better be doing it. That's the faith that Noah had. God said, make it 300 cubits. It's going to be 300 cubits, period. That's the faith that Noah had. That's the faith that saved Noah. And God warns us over and over and over not to be changing his word. We hear a lot in today's world about being saved by faith. It's your faith that'll save you. Well, I'm going to tell you that I believe I am saved by faith. Now, don't y'all run out of here and panic yet, because I left off a word that the world puts in there, only. And I did not define faith. That's what we're doing tonight. I believe I am saved by faith that is an obedient faith. Because if my faith is not obedient in it, it's not going to save me. It's not real faith. If I have faith, like Noah had faith, I will obey the commands of God. I won't go off looking to do something that I think needs to happen. I'll be saying, what does God say? What does God say? Let's do it His way. We have a lot of problems in the Lord's body today. We have a lot of congregations that meet on a regular basis that claim to be churches of Christ. Some of them aren't, brothers and sisters. Some of them aren't. I read a report from a congregation not too long ago. It's been about a year and a half ago now. They said, we're making some changes in the way that women can have roles in the church. Every time I talk about this topic, George, my wife just looks at me and says, where are you going? She calls this my "you better get packing" sermon, that sermon. And one of the things that they said, the elders, in quotes, of that congregation, in quotes, said, was, we have concluded an exhaustive 4-month study of whether women can preach, teach, and be elders and deacons in the Lord's church. And I thought, there's the problem. Right there's the problem. If it took you 3 or 4 months to figure out what God says, you're trying to push God's word into something He doesn't say. And they did. If we have the faith that Noah had, we will listen to what God says and do what He says, not add to it and not take away from it. You see, faith saved Noah from destruction. And the kind of faith that Noah had, an active, obedient faith, is the only faith that saves us. If we claim to have faith and we're not active and we're not obedient, then we don't have a faith that is what it should be. Faith that causes obedience. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 21, there's also an antitype that now saves us, baptism. Not the removal of the filth of the flesh, but the answer of a good conscience toward God. A good conscience toward God says, I'm being obedient, God. You remember Adam and Eve in the garden? What happened after they disobeyed God? They went and they hid from God. Why did they hide from God? Because they were naked? I don't think so. Always says we hid God because we knew we were naked. But it wasn't the nakedness that caused them to hide. It was the conscience in them that said, we've disobeyed God. That's what Peter's talking about. We need to have a good conscience toward God where we can look at God and say, I've done the best I can do. I know I'm not a profitable servant. I know that all men have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, but I've done the best I can do, God. And that faith of Noah that causes obedience is the kind of faith that saved Noah. Wouldn't surprise me if Noah made some mistakes building the ark. Wouldn't surprise me at all. We'll take a little side detour here and talk about grace, because we don't talk about grace enough. And we have the wrong opinion of grace and the wrong idea about grace. Let me explain to you my illustration of grace. Grace is that time when I'm standing before the bar and the books are open and God's looking down at me and He's looking at that book and I'm standing there saying, the sweat starts popping out because I know what I've done. And I know what I haven't done. And Jesus, the Son of God, walks over to me and puts His hand on my shoulder and says, Father, this is one of mine. I know he messed up, but he did the best he could do. And my blood, my grace is going to make up the difference. That's grace. That's grace. That's what Noah had to have, faith that enabled him to do that. Now, let me explain to you a prerequisite of that kind of grace. Some of y'all have raised teenagers. I have raised several. Hasn't bothered me a bit. except this occasional twinge. One of the challenges of raising teenagers is to teach them how to do what they need to do. Son, it's your night to clean the kitchen. 10 minutes later, okay, all done. Wait, time out. Did you clean the kitchen or did you do the dishes? Well, dishes are all clean. Did you clean the kitchen? I'll be back. 10 minutes later, okay, I'm going to watch TV. Whoa, time out. Did you clean the kitchen? Well, yeah. Did you clean the kitchen? I'll be back. Usually between the ages of 10, 11, and 13, 14, took an average of 4 or 5 times. Why? They weren't doing the best they could do. They were doing enough to get by, they hoped. Had to explain to them and teach them that doing enough to get by doesn't get by. Now, I don't remember a time when any of our kids, we raised 4 children and 13 foster kids. 16 foster kids, I lose count. I don't remember a time when any of them got the kitchen perfectly clean. I don't remember a time when any of them cleaned the kitchen so well that Brenda didn't walk in and say, I got to take care of this. Now, me, I'd look at it and say, it looks perfect to me. What do I know? I'm a guy. I can walk over a pair of socks on the bedroom floor 6 times and never even know it's there. Yeah, I heard an amen there. I finally got one. But they had done the best they could do, so they got to go watch TV. Brothers and sisters, are we living our lives for Jesus the best we can do? Can you honestly look Jesus in the eye and say, not I did perfect, not I did everything I was supposed to do exactly right, not I didn't make any mistakes, but can you honestly look Jesus in the eye and say, Lord, I got nothing left. I did the very best I could. Because that's when His grace will cover us. I don't believe His grace is going to cover us sloughing through. That's the faith that Noah had. When we talk about faith, it's active faith. When we talk about faith, it's faith that causes obedience. It causes action. It causes effort. That's the faith that saved Noah, the faith that saved us. Noah's faith was an obedient trust in God. Not just a trust, an obedient trust in God. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7, where we started. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is according to faith. Does your faith have the characteristics of faith that saved Noah? Does your faith accept a future reality as fact? Noah's future reality was flood. Our future reality is heaven or hell. It's digital. It's on or off. It's one or the other. Do we really accept that as reality? I haven't seen heaven. I haven't seen hell. But I believe they both exist. And I have enough faith they exist that I want to go to one and I don't want to go to the other. Is that where your faith is? Do you accept that unseen future reality as a fact? Does your faith, like Noah's, allow you to not worry about those who scoff at you and make fun of you? And those who persecute you for following Jesus? Does your faith, like Noah, cause you to act, not just to think? I heard somebody say one time, if a man tells his wife he will do something, he'll do it. She doesn't need to nag him every 3 months. Does our faith cause us to act, or do we put it off? Does your faith cause you, like Noah's did, to do what God commands? No more and no less. We often say we have faith, but do we? Do we really? If we have faith, it will cause us to change what we're doing. It will change how we're living. It'll change how we talk. It'll change how we treat others. And what you're calling faith in your life didn't change those things. Do you have faith? Or do you just believe? As do the demons and tremble. We're told we're a peculiar people. Peculiar is one of those funny words that the meaning has changed over the years. It doesn't just mean odd. It means that we're special. It means that we're different. It means that we don't look like everybody around us. We don't talk like everybody around us. We don't act like everybody around us. We don't live in such a way that everybody around us thinks we're just part of them. Is that where your life is? Is that where you are? Do you have faith? George asked me to speak on, if I recall correctly, the specific was, is it faith if it doesn't cause action? I don't know how close I got to where you were going, George. But I think it's a fair statement to say that what we've looked at tonight in the life of Noah tells us by his example, by his actions, by his words, by the Scripture, that there is no such thing as faith if it doesn't change your life. Don't know where you are. Don't know where your head is. Don't know where your heart is. Don't know what your actions in your life are like. I only know 3, 4 of you. But you do. And more importantly, God does. God knows where you are. God knows what your faith is like. And He knows whether you have faith or you just believe. If you need to make a change, I encourage you, please, tonight, make that change. I don't know if you've put on faith, put on Christ. His plan of salvation is pretty simple. We need to hear, because you can't believe what you don't hear. All my years in management, I never solved a problem I didn't know about. If you've heard the Word and you know what you need to do you believe it? Do you have faith enough to act on it? Are you willing to stand up and say, Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God? Let me pause for a moment there and digress just a little bit. We talk about baptism for the remission of sins, and it is, and that is critical, and that is important. One of the things I don't think we stress near enough, George, is baptism is a commitment, confession that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, is saying, I know who He is, and I'm accepting that He is the King, the Creator, and subjecting myself to Him. On that confession, we're buried with Him in baptism and rising to walk a new life. And along the way in there is interspersed this concept of changing my life. We use the word repentance and we throw it around, but we don't really understand what it means. It means changing my life. Acknowledging that Jesus is the Christ, that He's the Son of the living God who created everything. Changing my life so that my focus is on that, is an obedience to Him. If you haven't done that, why not? What's keeping you? We're going to sing an invitation song in just a minute. This is a perfect opportunity for you to come down these aisles. You won't come alone. George told me he and one or two of the elders will be up here at the time that we sing that invitation song. I think that's wonderful and it's great. But I'll make this commitment to you right here, right now. You start down those aisles, I will meet you. If two of you start down, I'll only meet one of you at a time, but I will meet you and I'll walk with you. You won't walk alone. If you've done something in your life and you haven't shown the faith that you need to show, why don't you change it? Please change it. If there's something in your life and it's personal, it's just between you and God. Nobody else around you knows about it. It's just you and God. Pray hard while we sing this song and straighten it out with God. Please. I've got a dear friend up in Kentucky. She's now 94 years old. When she was much younger, she popped up one day and she said, I've decided I'm going to do something different. She said, I'm going to start a reunion. I said, what kind of reunion are you going to start, Helen? She says, I'm going to set up a reunion in heaven. Southeast corner. And Leon, you're invited, and anybody you invite is invited to be there. Since that time, I seldom offer the invitation without telling you that you have an invitation from me with her full authority to attend that reunion, southeast corner of heaven. I plan to be there. I pray you will be too. I don't know if it'll be potluck or what it'll be, but we're going to have a reunion, southeast corner of heaven. If there's anything in your life that's keeping you from attending that reunion, from living in the mansion that Jesus has gone to prepare, please change it tonight. Don't walk out of here not knowing that you're going to be in heaven. There's something I say almost every time I preach. If you don't get anything else out of this, if you didn't get any of the dumb jokes, if you didn't get any of the illustrations, if you didn't get any of the lessons, if you walk out of here not knowing how to spell faith, let alone know what it means, listen to this. Because this is the most important statement I could make tonight. There is nothing more important than going to heaven. There is nothing more important than going to heaven. If something stands between you and heaven tonight, please remove it. Please change it.